we got three situations around the NBA where the pressure could be building, and one where the pressure is definitely building for sure, and that's the Jalen Duren contract situation with Detroit. Reportedly, it's at a complete standstill right now, and the Pistons keep saying that they're bringing Jalen Duren back as a priority, but if the two sides are not close, Jalen Duren seriously takes that qualifying offer, it's going to present a very interesting situation because here's the problem. Detroit cannot really afford to lose him. They just can't. They moved Isaiah Stewart. They didn't add another true center. John Collins is there. He's more of a 4 than a 5. We'll talk a little bit about that. Plus, there's a situation with Alperen Sengun as well, and he may be the single biggest key to the Rockets seriously taking that next step. And then finally, Jonathan Kuminga and the Lakers, who have been linked to him reportedly, are far apart. And Brian Windhorst has basically asked the question of, why is there so much focus around and attention around Jonathan Kuminga, which I actually agree with. We're going to talk about all that plus more right after this.
Welcome to the number one place for your daily basketball news and analysis, NBA Central.
What's going on, y'all? Welcome to another episode of the Full Court Podcast. My name is Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow us at the Full Court YT on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into it, man. According to sources, Jalen Duren and the Detroit Pistons are at a complete standstill in regards to their contract negotiations, and it hasn't really taken any step further. Ramona Shelburne on ESPN said this: I don't think a deal is going to happen anytime soon. I just talked to someone who said negotiations on Jalen Duren are at a standstill, and it could take deep into August. It could take quite a while. This is a situation where, I really do think like the Pistons are trying to play hardball a little bit with Jalen Duren and using his rough playoffs to, try to get him at a little bit less than the max, which Jalen Duren's reportedly going after in regards to that one. And so if a deal is not going to happen soon, the pressure is going to continue to build in regards to this one. Now, I'm going to say this. Is it super concerning right now? No, because I think we've all kind of knew that this was the route that was probably likely to go. We knew that after a couple of weeks into free agency. I think that restricted free agency for some moves extremely slowly. We saw it last year for Jonathan Kuminga, somebody we're going to talk about, Josh Giddey, even Quentin Grimes. But the thought process of that is that, listen, Jonathan Kuminga is already a free agent now. Quentin Grimes took the qualifying offer. Josh Giddey's the only one out of those three who signed a long-term deal with the Chicago Bulls, and so there should be there. The question then becomes about, should the Detroit Pistons pay him or should they hold the line of where they are right now? The side of paying him comes down to this. He just had a breakout season, even despite what the playoffs were. Detroit cannot afford right now to lose its starting center. You do not have something that can replace him with. And when you already have traded Isaiah Stewart, it provides even less depth there that you look at. But at the same time, the playoff production should help you get him a little bit cheaper. We've seen, how that helps in the long term with contracts and stuff like that. A supermax or max level deal is not going to, materialize here. It's just not going to, right? It doesn't match the projected actual value of him. And that's what you're going to have to ask in regards to that, right? Like that's what the Detroit Pistons are. Jalen Duren is good, but and the question is that despite him being good enough to where the Detroit Pistons do need him unless they want to take a huge step back, the question becomes about, how close to the number that he wants can you really get him at? And for Jalen Duren's case of it, he's of course weighing, him and his agent are probably weighing how much leverage do they really have into this one. He has leverage. Make no mistake about it. Detroit not only needs a starting caliber center, the roster does not have a clean replacement for him. And even then, with Jalen Duren has the ability to threaten and take the qualifying offer. And guess what? If he takes the qualifying offer, he's very unlikely to return to that team. Miles Bridges is the one player that's done that in recent memory, and it just doesn't happen very often, right? And so he's already made it known, reportedly, that he's open to going to another team if that's what it takes. And taking the qualifying offer would be the ultimate kind of middle finger to any type of leverage that the Detroit Pistons has, right? And so that's where you go in regards to it. Like the Detroit right now can't really risk to just lose him for nothing. And that's almost what the qualifying offer would do. Yes, you would have him for another season, but he's not movable, stuff like that. But Detroit still does have some absolute control in this one. They can still do sign and trades, right? That's something that can make sense for Detroit to not lose the value on the player for absolutely nothing. And so taking the qualifying offer for him would also be risky for Jalen Duren if he suffers an injury or if he has another bad playoff series or run or something like that. So Jalen Duren has the emotional leverage for sure. Detroit has the contractual leverage to a degree more so than that one. And that's why this thing is stuck where it is right now. And so we'll end up seeing where it ends up going. I think that they're going to eventually reach on a deal, whether it's a more short-term deal at the number that he wants, or maybe it's a long-term deal closer to the number that Detroit wants. I do think eventually that happens. Now, the question becomes about is what happens after that, right? Does this end up forcing Detroit eventually to end up moving Jalen Duren because of that relationship being strained because of these talks, even if he does sign a long-term contract? And that's a question that that Detroit's going to have to answer there, and that we'll see in the long term. It's not all going to be answered right now today in this free agency, but it is a long-term question that we'll see what they do in regards to that one. Moving on next to Alperen Sengun, who's a player on a Houston Rockets team that was no doubt disappointing last year. Ramona Sherborne as well talked about this when we said this. I think Sengun is really the big guy that they're looking forward to making that big leap. He started off last season so strong and then kind of tapered off towards the end of the year. I know they had some difficult conversations with him at the end of the year, just saying that this is what we need from you. This is what we expect from you in returns of habits and in terms of growth throughout the season, because he's been called Baby Joker for a long time. He has that skill set. They love him, and as a person there, and I think the sooner he takes that next step, the sooner this team gets to being one. And that by being one, that's a contender. Look, the Houston Rockets are an interesting team, right? Because they have tons of youth, and reportedly there were some talk internally of them deciding to maybe cash in on a little bit more of that youth and getting some proven players. Now, they ended up not really doing that this year, and that's fine. They're getting Fred VanVleet back, which is going to be good into that regard and stuff like that. And they're going to see what happens, but there's just no doubt that Sengun and him making the next leap would be huge. Now, his counting stats last year were great. 20 points per game, 8.9 rebounds, 6.2 assists per game, shooting the ball almost 52% from the field and 30% from three. There's just no doubt. He also averaged almost a steal and a half per game to go along with a block per game. So, Sengun stuffed the stat sheet last year. But it's more than just the stats, right? The counting stats in regards to that. It's about how do you actually make that next step as a player. And we know that Sengun is definitely a key to this team getting to the place that they want to get to. And he's only about to turn 24 years old. So the skill set of being Baby Joker is there. Even though the moniker, I hate that when you start naming players baby version of other players, it almost never works out. But he still has a lot that he has to prove. Houston made the playoffs, but they didn't advance. Sengun, tapered off last season. You saw that, right? The Houston Rockets, they need stronger habits and they need more consistency from him to get him to where he needs to go. And so whether you feel like that Baby Joker label is fair or not, right? His passing for the game, he can score, he can rebound, he can create for others, he can do all of that. I think if he was going to step into that, last year would have been the year, especially with VanVleet out. Last year would have been the year. So now that in regards to this one, you have to play into Sengun's instincts and who he is as a player. That doesn't mean that you don't still try to get him to grow and develop as a player. You need that too. But I think that, he's different. His instincts are just different from a lot of centers in the NBA, and that's where he goes to. Now, I do think the Baby Joker, that label can create unrealistic expectations for who he is as a player. Yes, he can be a hub, but Joker is one of the all-time offensive hubs in basketball history. That's who Jokic is, right? And so for Sengun, it has to be about proving the postseason impact, which you have to get through 82 games before you can get that done, and just continue to develop as a player. We just saw a player like Denny Advia make a huge leap late into his career, right? Sengun's now going into year 6. There's possibilities, and let's not act like he's been stagnant this time. He's not. He's gotten better each year, right? He's added something to his game. And last year, I think as well, learning to play with Kevin Durant is not easy. Kevin Durant has to play a certain particular way. He has to have the ball, and learning to play off a player with that gravity. We've seen players, it take a while to get over that hump and learn how to do that while still maintaining and being yourself. And maybe that's what a lot of these young players were faced with last year. Now you're going to have a whole training camp with Kevin Durant. Now you've had a whole season playing with Kevin Durant. And so hopefully that learning curve, if that is what was here, you've learned to take it a step further and you've learned to be better about that. And that's what you're going to hope. But there's just no doubt, Sengun making that true step into being a star is going to make a huge difference for if this Houston Rockets team can actually be a threat in the West, especially for a West that has the Oklahoma City Thunder. You have the San Antonio Spurs. You have the Minnesota Timberwolves. You have all these things going on down there. So you need players to make a step up. And Sengun's just as good, important as any of a player to make that next step. They were 5th in the Western Conference last year. Can you be better than that this season? And then can you go further in the playoffs? That's what the question should be about for the Houston Rockets next year. And let's see. But the question is a little bit different for Jonathan Kuminga. Brian Windhorst is my spirit animal in regards to this one. He said the outside interest in what happens to him is mind-boggling to me. The amount of attention and coverage that is paid to Jonathan Kuminga's contractual situation, I cannot compute it. Listen, I feel that way too. And I've said that last year. Like, Jonathan Kuminga is a perfectly fine young player, right? He's a flawed young player, but he's never really been a star. And I do think like there's been some allure because you clearly saw in Golden State that he didn't fit that team. That's clearly what you saw there. And I think that there was some allure of, okay, if he goes to this situation in a team where he's able to kind of be more of himself, be on ball more, be that dominant scorer, what would it look like? And you got to see a little bit of that at times. You got to see some of that in Golden State at times when players were missing. You got to see a little bit of that at times with the Atlanta Hawks. But the reality of it is Jonathan Kuminga is a player that has averaged 12.5 points per game for his career. 12.5 points per game for his career. That's it. That's what he's averaged. And he's going into year 6. Now, that's not to say that Kuminga, as still a young player himself, can't still make a step, because he can make a step. He'll be 24 years old in October. So there's still a lot of development that can be done for Jonathan Kuminga. No doubt about that. But it is like this thing that's like talked about, like Kuminga wanting $28 million and all this type of stuff. Like, what's going on here? Like, Kuminga is fine as a player, but I think you have to understand what you are. His impact has been inconsistent. He had his moment in Atlanta. He had a moment in Golden State. And I do think that you look at it like, yeah, the Lakers need reliable contributors, not just upside, and maybe Jonathan Kuminga can get that there. But when you look at the Lakers and what they have to offer, it's not like Kuminga is going to go to being a ball-dominant scorer there either, right? The Lakers need athletic wings. Jonathan Kuminga is athletic, and he does fit that profile as far as that. There is some upside there as well. But at the same time, he's not a defensive weapon at all. He's not a proven high-level shooter or scorer in that regard. His decision-making comes and goes as far as being bad to terrible and that type of thing. And paying for upside when you're trying to build around your star in Luka Doncic and build a championship contender can come back to bite you. And that's where the Lakers have to worry about what that next step in the cost is going to be. But at the end of the day, like, I get it. We're in the, like, there's a bidding war reportedly for Nick Richards. That's a place that we are in the offseason. So I guess we'll see what ultimately comes from it. But I just come down on this side of it. Let's just get something done so we can move the fuck on. That's it for me for today. I want to thank you guys for tuning in, man. Make sure you guys sound off in the comment section on all the topics down below. How do you feel about them? What do you think about Sengun making a step? What do you think about, the Jalen Duren nonsense, all that type of stuff? Sound off down below on that one. You guys can like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode or an upload. You can follow us at the Full Court YT. You send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. The Full Court, NBA Central Show at gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the #1 spot for everything basketball and NBA related. And then I'll catch you guys the next time I feel like making a video. Probably tomorrow. We'll see. Peace, y'all.
Been a presentation of the Breaks Media.